guys actually enjoy treating your customers like a piece of shit, because that's how I felt when I went to the Alamo Draft House. Okay? You know what? I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to text in your little crappy-ass theater. It was too f***ing dark in that place for me to find my seat, alright? I was using my phone as a flashlight to get to my f***ing seat. So excuse me for using my phone in USA, United States of America, where you are free to text in a theater. I was not aware that I couldn't text in your theater, all right? I've texted in all the other theaters in Austin, and no one ever gave a fuck about what I was doing on my fucking phone, all right? And it was on silent. It wasn't on loud. It wasn't bothering anybody. You guys obviously were being assholes to me, and I'm sure that's what you do, you know, to rip people off. You take my money, and then you throw me out. You know, I will never be coming back to your Alamo Draft House or whatever. I'd rather go to a regular theater where people are actually polite. And, you know, I'm going to tell everyone about how you are. And I'm pretty sure you guys are being on purpose. So thanks for making me feel like a customer. Thanks for taking my money.
It's chocolate. You should be very proud, Detective.
Shut up.
You've made a delicious life for yourself.
Said shut the fudge up. What?
You don't come near here. You stay away from here.
Here he comes.
What?
Are you listening, David? I was saying how much I admire you and your ice creams. You have incredible taste in fine ice creams.
What the fudge did you just say?
6 delicious flavors. They're so lovely. And once they're gone, David, they're gone.
David, step away from the prisoner. Step away, David. Step away.
What's in the box?
I'm not gonna tell you until
What's in the box? What's in the box?
We each have our weaknesses. It appears that gluttony is my sin of choice. And you add the mystery. I couldn't resist.
What's in the malted fudging box?
It's empty, David. It's empty.
No. It was full. 6 delicious flavors. Only available this month.
I know. It was delivered to your home. It was delectable.
Do you think anybody's gonna get, like, offended by this?
Just tall white Karens.
Monotony. It comes in all shapes and sizes. Dull, tedious, just plain boring. But what is this? A contender, perhaps? Something unboring by the looks of it. Jabs right at dull, an uppercut to tedium, something that keeps you on your toes, keeps your head on a swivel. A knockout punch to your old, boring workouts. Welcome to Fight Camp.
If we're honest, who wants to roll less travel? It's harder to teach us. Who wants the difficult route?
If you support safety in our schools, you will support the National Guard to come in here and keep our students safe.
People say, these students have changed. These students are lazy.
Your children aren't learning disability, they lazy. get students engaged so they don't want to skip class, so they want to be in their classrooms.
There are teachers in this profession who should not be teachers. There are teachers in this profession who don't care about children.
These students don't want to learn. No, the adults have changed. See, the parents don't have the back of the teachers.
He ain't slow. He ain't got no learning problem. His parents didn't give him a foundation.
Young people, as a nation, we sorely need the depth and breadth of your intelligence, character, and also your clarity.
I think about, in particular, the history of people that look like me who are getting cheated.
So if you're asking me right now as an educator, what's wrong with these kids? There's nothing wrong with them.
Teachers are the most important people in the world.
They're whimpering in fear, and we're sitting here scared of them.
Because if they get it right, they'll change the world because they're in charge of the most important resource, and that's our children.
Shaolin shadow boxing and the Wu-Tang sword style. If what you say is true, the Shaolin and the Wu-Tang could be dangerous. Do you think your Wu-Tang sword can defeat me?
On guard. I'll let you try my Wu-Tang style.
Same with you. Same with you.
Set out to get you with a fine-tooth comb. I was soft inside. There was something going on.
Oscar Mike Radio is a proud podcast partner of Reach Across America Radio, heard every Thursday at 11 a.m. and Sunday at 8 a.m. Eastern. They're also big supporters of the nonprofit I Got Your Six, Two Lives at Once. And with every wreath you sponsor through Oscar Mike Radio, $5 goes back to this great organization dedicated to making a difference in the lives of veterans, law enforcement, firefighters, and first responders battling PTSD. Two Lives at Once pairs these brave men and women together with dogs rescued from kill shelters. In this way, two lives are saved at the same time by saving each other. Donate now. Go to reachacrossamerica.org/Oscar Mike Radio to help That's reachsacrossamerica.org/Oscar Mike Radio.
It was the greatest honor. Hero of the Soviet Union. Awarded to those who gave their all to defend the motherland. Today, it is the hero of the Russian Federation. The men and women who have served the motherland's interests with great honor and distinction. Marco Rubio.
We're going to need to have functional embassies in Moscow and in Washington.
Tulsi Gabbard.
According to the U.S. government, these biolabs are conducting research on dangerous pathogens.
J.D. Vance.
I don't really care what happens to Ukraine one way or another.
And the greatest hero of our time, Donald Trump. These heroes know Russia is a peaceful nation that will never bow down to the decadent American values of what they call democracy. Remember them. Let history record their names amongst the greatest of our heroes. Never forget, they live in our hearts forever.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
Yeah.
Can you dig it?
Like some motherfucking action heroes in it. Yeah.
This is blasphemy. This is madness. This is the proof.
Into the twisted mind of my literature, designed to get into the depths of your mind, administer sickness around to mimic the likes of snuff cinema. What you must get into, you're nothing but pups. Remember you Homer and Happy Simpson, son. Nothing Ithaca. Talkers like the northern half of Korea's peninsula. ESP your island like the booth, something sinister. ESP your island like the booth, something sinister. ESP your island like the booth, something sinister.
All right, it's your boy Sinister One broadcasting live from the City of Champions. You are watching The Booth. It is February flew by. It is March 4th. Blocks ahead this weekend. Spring ahead this weekend. So it won't be getting dark at 3:30, 4 o'clock at night now. We'll have some sunlight, and we'll have more and more sunlight as we get deeper into the summer. I got to thank my guest from last week, recording artist, Soul, Stay On Lit, and Levi, who accompanied me to the PBR. Thank you for tuning in last week. Tonight, first Tuesdays, my guys are already here. Let me get into my sponsors real quick. Michael Douglas Barreto, MDB Electronics. If you need a controller fix, get it out to him. Xbox controller, 24 hours, 48 hours, you're back to gaming. Hello to all the people in the chat. Denise, I see you. Andrea, I see you. All the people in the chat, I see you. Also, Viana Marine, 494,000 streams. Check out her music online everywhere. Tactical Target Systems. Those are those targets you see me at the range with. And then ILoveBostonSports.com. Kimberly Ian, Empowerment Photography. And Underwatch Protective Services. And before we get into the breaking story in the news booth, I got to let my guys introduce themselves. I'm going to start off with in the bottom left-hand corner. I'm going to let my defense attorney introduce himself.
Evening, Ken Diesel. How you doing? Welcome back. Let's get the show on the road. Time's money, and we're short on both.
And I know this guy's fingertips have to be hurting. This guy has been dropping column after column after column over there on the corridor. I'm going to let my guy in the upper left-hand corner introduce himself.
I think you just did. It's great to be here. Let's get going.
All right, so we're going to get into the news booth. We've got a breaking news booth story, which is pretty funny. because a lot of the unions during the election back in November, they kind of wanted to ride the fence. They didn't want to name whoever they were supporting. Well, the Boston police have just come out, and they're now backing their support of Mayor Michelle Wu. And this is real funny because she's under fire for going toe-to-toe with Tom Homan of ICE. Now she's got the backing from the Boston police, and she's also got the backing from the Mass State Police. Mass State Police say that immigration is not in their contract. Boston Police says to protect and serve the community is first and foremost their mission statement. Their job is not to help out immigration and perform immigration duties. If they have someone if they have an immigrant that has a existing warrant or something of that sort, which Ken can talk about, they have to grant that. They have to take care of that. They have to do all that. But as far as people here who've gone past their visas and have no criminal offenses, that's not happening. And Ken, I'm going to let Ken explain why this is a big deal, because Holman has gotten on his rocking horse and his numbers are low. They don't even talk about the numbers so low now. They're so low, they're so poor. And then the hypocrisy of this all is that they pulled the head of ICE from Massachusetts to help them get their numbers up, which is funny because they've been illegally sending migrants to Massachusetts for months on end, and you pull the ICE lead from a blue state instead of a red state. Make it make sense, Ken.
Look, this has all been about the show, not the substance. Let me explain to you why the state police, why the Boston police, why everyone else is getting a little angry. Number one, it's money. In order to do that, they're going to have to pay their cops a lot of overtime. They don't have the money. Number two, it's not like the cops in Massachusetts don't have anything else better to do with their lives. Every time they arrest someone or take someone into custody, generates a little bleep ton of paperwork. And one thing I can tell you about cops, two things that cops hate are waiting around for court and paperwork. And they can't stand it. That's not what they want to get paid for. The other thing is, once you got them into custody, where are you going to put them? Okay? And then that's more money for the counties. Because remember, the counties in Massachusetts run the jails, houses of correction, or correctional centers, as they sometimes are called. So now these counties don't have the money. And then you got to figure out what you're going to do with them. Our immigration courts or ICs are overburdened as it is. They literally don't have the room to deal with the people they've got now. That's why everyone's so angry. And remember, the feds aren't going to pay for this. This is going to be a state issue. The states are going to have to do this policy. And they don't have, and in case anyone hasn't been paying attention, Massachusetts doesn't have all the money in the world. And they're all complaining about it. So I am not surprised. Again, it's one of those things that all the MAGA maggots out there who were pumping their fists about owning the libs and America first and immigrants are taking my jobs, eating cats and eating dogs. Well, congratulations. You got what you wanted. Now, cough up some green. I want to see you pay for it.
Anything you want to add to that?
And, by the way, one last thing.
Yep.
For the 14,412th time, if you are a person who is not a U.S. citizen who entered this country without inspection or an EWE, or you violated your status by working on a visa or you overstay, that's a civil infraction, not a criminal one. So piss on all of you.
And I got a question for you. I did see a funny story that ICE stopped a defense attorney. I guess his client was granted an extension on his date. They were going to court to go get the extension, and ICE stopped the defense attorney's car and yanked his client out of the car to deport him back before he could get into the courthouse. Can they do that?
No, they can't. First of all, no. As I've said before, ICE is not a law enforcement agency. They're an administrative inspection agency. They have no arrest powers. They can no more stop a vehicle on the road than the Department of Agriculture's meat inspectors can stop it. They have no authority to do that. The only way they can do that is they have a ride along with a local police officer or a federal officer from DEA, FBI, or CPB, Customs and Border Protection, who are law enforcement. So no, these people are probably going to end up being sued for a civil rights violation.
Okay, so quick question.
Party civil rights and the individual.
So these videos of ICE agents wearing masks and not being accompanied by local police officers and going into businesses, as we've seen down in Texas, Mexico, California, here in Massachusetts, they're not supposed to be doing that by themselves? Or
well, let me say, can they enter a business for the purpose of inspecting their HR files to look at their I-9s? Yes, that they can do. They are empowered to do that because they are in charge of making sure. For those of you who don't know, if you apply for a job, you got to fill what we call an I-9, which proves that you have the authority to work in the United States. ICE does have the authority to examine those files. That's it. So if they're going there for that limited purpose, then yes, they have the authority to do that. Anything else, no. They don't.
So they can't walk into jobs like they've been doing in some places and putting cuffs on people and pulling them out?
No, they can't. First of all, they need to do that, they would need a warrant. They would need a court summons. If someone has been told to go to immigration court for a master calendar hearing or failed to show up at an individual hearing, then yes, there's a court order that allows ICE to go out there and see them for that purpose because they're in contempt of court and they failed to show up in court. It's the equivalent of a capias here in Massachusetts. You fail to show up in court, you can't be brought into court by a constable or a deputy sheriff. That's the only time. But you just randomly showing up, no. They can't do that.
And then we know why this is happening. The numbers are way down, and they're just pulling anybody and everybody now because they've got to get these numbers up because it's cost them 3 times as much as it was costing previous administrations. Margaret, what's going on? I see you in the chat. Tell Chris hello. Anything you want to add to that, Rob?
Yeah, real quick. First of all, Ken gave a great summary. I won't even try to repeat any of that. I would just add 2 things. First, as I've said numerous times on the show and on the corridor, our immigration system has been woefully deficient for 40 years. We are long overdue for an overhaul, and that's the only way any of this is ever going to get fixed. It doesn't matter who's in the White House. It doesn't matter who's in Congress. We need a comprehensive bill. We sort of had one last year that would have made big progress, not everything, but very big progress. And of course, the Republicans killed it because it wouldn't have been an election issue. And now, so we're going on 45 years. Shame on this entire country for letting this happen. The other comment I would make, going back to the union endorsement, is it really doesn't make a hill beans. Because as we know, unions have historically given an endorsement, for example, to President Biden, and all their members voted for Trump. So the endorsement really doesn't mean very much because the rank and file members are going to vote for whoever they want to. And, it goes back to the whole controversy over endorsements and everything else. So I don't know that it really matters.
Also in the news booth, this last story I just got to mention real quick. Rest in peace to Skype. Skype is going bye-bye within the next couple of months. These guys here, when we started doing podcasts, and Skype was what we were using. Skype was the big thing. Skype was what everybody was using. Now you have Teams, you have Zoom. Skype is actually part of Microsoft, but what they're doing is they're just going to put everything into Teams now, and they're just going to end Skype. So if you have anything on Skype, any files or anything of that sort, you've got to download it. You've got to get it off because it's going bye-bye as of, I believe, May. And we just want to thank Skype because Skype, we've had some good shows using Skype over the years, even on WXBR. So good stuff. Real quick, the entertainment booth tonight. Daredevil Born Again, Reborn Again. That's tonight on Disney Plus. That's the only thing I want to mention. And in the sports booth, the worst kept secret in football right now. Jimmy Johnson has announced his retirement. If you guys watched the Super Bowl, there was an awkward moment during the Super Bowl halftime show when they were speaking and they showed this AI video of Jimmy Johnson's career and all this stuff. And I believe it was James Brown, who asked him, or maybe it was Michael Strahan that asked him, is this the announcement? And he had that look on his face like, yeah. And it was like, oh my God, don't ask that. And that was pretty much the cat out the bag. It's the worst kept secret. Jimmy Johnson, an illustrious career in football and broadcasting. So big ups to him. Congrats to him. I hope he spends a little bit of time with his family and we go from there. Let's get into
Hang on. I got something to add. Go for it. 2 things. First of all, when is Bradshaw going to retire? Because that guy's a brainless idiot. And so we need, Jimmy Johnson, it's good that he retires. He's probably ready for that too. But Bradshaw's been retired, I think, for 10 years. He just kind of shows up and sits there and doesn't know where he is. So, maybe we need to figure that out.
He's been close to being fired. Couple of times.
Because he sucks. And no offense to Pittsburgh Steelers fans, I know he was legendary, but at some point retire, dude. Go with dignity. The other thing, the more important football story that you both failed to mention is who is coming to Foxborough this season.
Well, I know the Eagles just signed Saquon to a big contract.
That's not what I'm talking about. The Giants are coming, baby.
Oh,
the Giants are coming.
Might be a field trip this year.
I'm smelling it.
Hold on a second. I missed this. I apologize. What, you know what the date is?
No, they haven't announced the dates, just the home games. Yep. But it looks like it's week 10.
Ooh, that could be a good week. That could be a
maybe
good week.
Maybe a November timeframe. But I'm waiting for them to announce the exact day and see what the tickets look like.
Well, gentlemen, we need to go. We need to go.
Just saying.
Ooh.
If no other reason than to protect Rob from the savages of the fan base, he shows up with his blue and white jersey on.
That'll be good stuff. Good stuff.
I'll tell you this. There was I had Comcast had to come out today. There was a problem with my Wi-Fi. They came and replaced it. Great guy came and he sees my Giant stuff in the house because, of course, I'm a real fan. I don't hide it. I have my Giant stuff all over. Ken's seen it.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, I make sure there's extra when Ken comes over. But but anyway, he's obviously a Patriots fan. So he comes in and he says, "So I guess," as he's doing his work, he was very professional. He says, "So I guess you're a big Giants fan." I said, "I sure am." I said, "And I guess that's not popular up here." He says, "Well, I really don't mind." But he said, "What is the most famous Giants play in history?" I said, "Well, of course, it's the David Tyree helmet catch." He said, "Yes, and I'm good friends with Rodney Harrison."
No,
he's good friends with Rodney Harrison. They go to games every year, and if Harrison ever gets in the Hall of Fame, which he does deserve, I'm the first one to say.
Oh yeah,
he's going to be there at the ceremony. So this was a pretty cool Comcast guy, Xfinity guy that came over. Good friends with Rodney Harrison, so we were talking football the whole time. So anyway, sorry to sidetrack you, but I thought that was fun.
Oh, good. That's a good story. I like that story.
Awesome.
Hey, Margaret, what's going to tell Chris hello? We got a lot of people in the chat, watching the chat. All right, let's get into, I don't know if I did the topic legal booth. Let's get into the legal booth. Pam Bondi. Oh, she's complaining. She's fresh new to the job, and she's already been misled on the Epstein no burger. She was given these Epstein files. She thought she had everything, and then all of a sudden, all hell broke loose. And she's realizing that she's been set up to take this fall of not providing, and she's going to be the one. Look, I think she's going to be the first one to step away. She's not going to be putting herself out there and getting hung out to dry. There's a reason why there was a no burger, because the paperwork that was given to you was, they left off the stuff that they didn't want you to see. And she's learning. There's a lot of MAGA people right now. There's a lot of MAGA people that are learning stuff real quick about their place in this regime. The Marjorie Taylor Greens, who's still biting her lip from time to time, she's still being a big MAGA supporter, but she's yet to get a cabinet seat. It is crazy. And here's the funny thing, people. We talked about this on the show in the next topic. President Trump has just found out through the courts that he is now having the federal freeze funding. He's got a couple of them out there. For every one he's won, he's lost 2 or 3. And we kind of predicted this. We predicted that the votes were very minimal on the floor. He really couldn't risk things to go to Congress to be voted on because he only had like a 3 to 4 vote margin. So he realized this. So he decided to do all these executive orders to bypass Congress. And now we've got all this crap tied up in the court. 2 of those did get passed by SCOTUS. Justice Roberts was a big part of that. One of them isn't dead and done. It's just a pause. But he's lost a few people on SCOTUS. Amy Cohen Barrett, she's not been happy with him. He'll never lose Clarence Thomas as long as Clarence Thomas is married to Ginny Thomas. Then you've got Alito. You've got to kind of figure out where these people stand, because that's kind of where some of this stuff is gonna depend on ending up and making that decision. Your thoughts on some of these court cases, R Squared, that are being, He's lost some and he's won a couple. So,
here's the thing that people have to remember about these. Most of these are not the actual cases yet. So we don't actually have substantive legal opinions that we can analyze. Most of these are for injunctive relief. These are people running to court claiming that, to get something stayed or what, meaning, not to get too into legalese, but basically they're looking for court orders to stop something from happening until the case can actually go to court and be heard. So most of what you're seeing are stays being granted, stays being lifted. Very few of the cases have actually gone to trial in a substantive way. So my reaction is,
Zero.
Of course, yeah, exactly. As far as I know, none, but I'm sure some are getting there. But the point is that this doesn't really mean anything from a legal standpoint. This is just a procedural thing. If a court grants a stay, it means that it could cause real big harm if actions are taken before the decision, because if the decision goes the other way, it might be too late because all the harm has been done. And then other courts will say, nah, it's not something that can't be fixed if the decision goes a different way, so we're going to lift it. It's Ken and I took these courses in law school. It's esoteric stuff. It's not exciting. And at the end of the day, what matters are the actual legal cases that will go from the district court to the circuit courts of appeal and then up to the Supreme Court. And that's when it's going to get interesting. That's when I'll start doing my analysis. I'm sure Ken will do the same thing. But right now, there's really not too much there's really not too much to analyze.
And realistically, like I said, this could just tie up for the next 4 years, to be honest. By the time this is all said and done, this is why I keep saying he's a kind of a lame duck president, because if everything's tied up in court for 4 years, he's going to be out unless they can get this third term bill going. I did see one. He had fired the labor secretary who was under a 5-year contract. I just saw that he has to give her job back. That was one of the news stories today, that he can't fire her. Ken, you want to get on that one? You want to add to that?
Yeah, if I can back it up.
Yep.
Rob was directly on point, but I think I just need to clarify for non-legal geeks, like normal humans who have lives and girlfriends or boyfriends, stuff like that.
That's why I tried to avoid the legalese.
When you start a case, if you ask for relief immediately, you ask for what I call injunctive relief. The stand for that is the difference between, if I use a football analogy, going 3rd and short and 3rd and 25. So if the case you need to prove is going from getting a first down is 3rd and 1, injunctive relief is going 25 yards as opposed to 1 yard. So I am not surprised that some of the injunctive relief has been overturned. I'm surprised so many of them have been upheld. That really shocks me, because the court's telling you is there's no chance in hell you're going to win. Go away now before I really have to hurt you. As for the labor secretary, if I may clarify, Mr. One, we are not talking about the senior member of the U.S. Department of Labor. That's a cabinet position. That is a person the president can hire and fire at will. All cabinet secretaries serve at the pleasure of the president. That has been true since George Washington. So if Trump wants to be George Steinbrenner and fire, a cabinet secretary a day, he's well within his legal rights. Whether that's an intelligent, prudent thing to do, that's another conversation. What we are talking about is another one. That individual had a contract with the U.S. federal government. Because if you remember last month's show, I talked about the contract clause. The U.S. government can't violate its own contracts. If they do that, they can be sued in federal court. And if the contractee, that is the person who is trying to enforce the contract, did everything right, then the court's going to rule in their favor 100% of the time. And that's what happened. Basically, it says 5-year contract, absence of showing that you violated a term of the contract or you did some other misconduct, you're stuck with this individual, whether you like him, her, it, non-binary, whatever term you want to use or not, you're SOL.
Right, and that's exactly what happened, and she's coming back to that position. So it's good to hear from that. The last topic in the legal booth, the DOJ fires multiple immigration judges, adding to the backlog. We already talked about, the system being shorthanded. We've been talking about this for years, me and Ken, on going way back. We talked about how this system is antiquated. The weights are just ridiculous. It shouldn't be that way. And now the DOJ, under orders from Trump, has fired multiple immigration judges. And these were, what was it? I think I heard it was like 25 to 30 incoming judges that would have kind of gave some relief to this backlog. Not much, but every little bit helps.
Okay, I think we need to clarify what they did. An administrative judge is referred to as an administrative law judge or an ALJ. They are civil servants. They are with the Executive Office of Immigration Review of the Department of Justice. After the probationary period, they can't be fired. What Trump did is there were a number that were coming in. He decided not to appoint them. He didn't technically fire them. He just basically terminated their job offers, which is incredibly stupid. I am saying this as someone who practices in immigration court a lot. I mainly do Boston. I sometimes do Hartford and Providence. That's where the courts. Right now in Boston, we have 12 immigration judges. That includes 4 that we call recalls. These are people who have retired, but they pulled back. Okay, that's 12. We are Region 1, which means they are responsible for covering all of Massachusetts, Vermont, and New Hampshire. Maine's got its own, Connecticut's got its own. Okay, do you have any idea how many people we are talking about? Not only do they adjudicate people who are EWIs, we're talking about adjustment of statuses, we're talking about asylum cases. No joke, a master calendar hearing, they can have over 200 people per day, and we still got a huge backlog. There aren't enough TAs, trial attorneys. There aren't enough. I mean, this it's just insane. Firing 25 people is the equivalent of you going to a house fire and then cutting the hoses to all the to 25% of the fire department because you don't like the color of the fire trucks.
Anything you want to add to that? Doug's in the chat. What's going on, Doug? You want to chat? Doug, drop it in the chat.
Yeah, that's a good summary again. Ironically, I applied to be an immigration judge 8 years ago, I guess it is now, and never heard anything. So I could be fixing this problem.
Yeah. The other thing we need to understand, if I can say one more thing again, they are technically not judges. Judges are in Article 3. They are not part of the judiciary. They are part of the executive branch. They used to be called hearing officers up until 1996, by the way. Just, it isn't a court. It's an administrative hearing. That's all it is.
Doug John Macedo, he says, I would love to join this. Doug, if you're still there, drop what you got to say in the chat. Doug says, I would want to be on the screen. Let me get into our next one. Let me see what he's trying to do. So the last question I had, let's get into the first topic because this here, we're going to get into the Trump troubles right now. Let's get into the first topic of Trump troubles. And first topic of the Trump troubles. Oh, hold on. We still got one more. SCOTUS. Oh, nope. We talked about that. You guys did talk about that. I don't have to touch base on, the SCOTUS and Roberts and Alito and what's going on there. So let's kind of get into the Trump trouble. Oh, did you guys have any comments on Pam Bondi? That was the questions I had for you.
No, Pam Bondi is an empty suit. And anyone who believes they're going to get the full thing on the Epstein files, I got a lovely bridge in Brooklyn I'm dying to sell you. And I'm saying this as a partisan liberal Democrat. As much as I would like to lay this blame solely at the MAGA screw-ups, there are a lot of people in the Democratic Party who don't want those files coming out as well. Epstein was an equal opportunity oppressor. So I'm sure there's a lot of people on my side, Rob's side of the aisle, that have a lot to be scared of. And so that's my only qualification.
And I know, Rob, you were very critical of Pam Bondi yourself when she first was announced, and she's now been confirmed. Anything you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is a classic case of a sellout, right? And Ken said empty suit. She chose to become one. When she was the attorney general in Florida, it's not someone that I necessarily would have agreed with politically, but she had a good reputation and she was less partisan. She did a decent job as Attorney General overall. She handled the right type of cases. She reached across the aisle a little bit. She wasn't an extreme person, and she served a couple of terms and left office in very good standing, at least within the state of Florida. The problem is when she left office, she decided to chase the almighty dollar, and I don't begrudge that to anybody. People work in public service. You don't get paid that much, even as an elected official, at least compared to the private sector anyway. And so she chased the dollar. That's fine. But the problem is she joined Trump's personal legal defense team, and she completely sold out her conscience. She sold out her integrity. And so she went from a pretty decent public servant to just a sycophant. And so when she was nominated for Attorney General, if she had gone straight from the Florida Attorney General's job, she probably would have been one of the better nominees from Trump. Not that I like his nominees, but she would have been one of the better ones that he appointed. Unfortunately, because she had many years of private practice to demonstrate what must be her true character and her sellout to Trump, she's never recovered from that. And you could see it now, right? She lied through her confirmation hearings. She tried to tell everybody that she would be the U.S. Attorney General, similarly to the way she was the Florida Attorney General, but she's been nothing like it. She's been nothing but a sycophant. So leave it at that.
Hey, John, I know John was trying to get in the chat, but he says his computer keeps shutting down. So, John, just drop whatever you want to say. Just drop it in the chat, and I'll relay it to the guys in the chat, because I can't afford to have you join the Zoom and crash our Zoom if your computer's shutting down. Drop it in the chat, John. In the Trump troubles. Well, we're going to get right into this. President Zelenskyy visited the White House. It caused a huge uproar, this meeting. Now, I'm going to tell people, there's a lot of stuff going back and forth out here. The full video is about 29 minutes long before it divulges, into this thing that's gone viral. And first and foremost, there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of lies being put out there. There's a lot of stuff out there about this situation. Now, first and foremost, Zelenskyy was already kind of on the defensive. This is a guy that just the week before, Trump called him a dictator. And then 2 days before his visit, Trump rolls back and lies and says, I never called him a dictator. Well, it was a lie, because you did. You called him a dictator twice. So you lied once again. So that defensive was already there. The first video is him arriving, and the first thing that happens is that President Trump makes a comment and says, oh, he came dressed for the event. And if Trump was smart and if Trump knew anything, since the invasion of the Ukraine, this man has worn this military jumpsuit that represents his people and represents his military since day one. When he came to Congress, when Biden was here, he wore a green jumpsuit with the same military symbol to support his people. So this whole thing about the suit, and I'm just letting people this whole thing was bad from the get-go. You have JD Vance, who's acting like the side chick, who finally gets a chance to speak because Musk has been in that vice president position since the inauguration. So JD Vance gets his time to shine, and he jumps all over him in the White House. And then this reporter comes out and asks him about the suit. And everybody's like, yeah, he's disrespectful. Well, first of all, that reporter was Brian Green, Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend. Okay? So pay attention to the players involved in this situation, people. This is a strategic thing here. And he was already on the defensive. He already knew that things were going to happen. And Zelenskyy kind of was like, okay, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. And it descends into what we ended up seeing. And now it's a huge debate. People are talking about after Ukraine. We're siding with Trump on this. Well, I hate to say this, but Rob's a military guy. And there's a reason why we need to back Ukraine and Ukraine doesn't fall. Because if Russia takes Ukraine, guess where he's going afterwards? It'll be Poland and other countries. And European nations know this. So when you say after Ukraine, I don't get it. So Rob has dropped a ton of articles on this. So I'm going to start off. I'm going to let Rob. This is a guy. Thank you for your service, Rob. He's a U.S. retired Army colonel. He's a JAG. If there's anybody who can talk about diplomacy, this whole thing with the Ukraine, and granted, yes, there are some things that people don't like about Zelenskyy. There are some questionable things that Zelenskyy has done, but I'm going to show you the hypocrisy in another topic after this. But I'm going to let Rob speak on this whole thing about Ukraine and why it's important for us to kind of pay attention here.
So this will be interesting. To quote Lindsey Graham from just a month ago and repeated times before that, as Lindsey Graham says, and I don't often quote Lindsey, so pay attention, but as Lindsey has said multiple times, and I agree with him, Ukraine is an incredible ally of the United States. They are fighting and have been fighting one of our biggest enemies. They've been doing it incredibly well. They have been showing the mastery of U.S. weaponry. They have significantly weakened and embarrassed the Russian military. And this is all to our national and international strategic advantage without losing a single life. I get it. It's expensive. We're spending a lot of money, but we didn't ask for this. Russia invaded Ukraine. We didn't start this. Ukraine didn't start this. But if you don't stop it, Putin doesn't stop at Ukraine. Poland knows they're next. The Baltic states know they're next. This is why Finland and Sweden joined NATO. So the entire world knows what's at stake here. And everybody in the United States, including Democrats and Republicans, knows it. It's only Trump that doesn't know it. And because he has this weird relationship with Putin, and we'll save that for another time. Now, going to the meeting that's at issue here, this is what we're talking about. You know, I don't know if Zelenskyy knew what was going to happen or not, but he had no choice but to come. He needs the United States help. He thought that he needed to speak up because there's peace negotiations going on that have ignored him, have ignored Ukraine. I don't know how you don't include the country who's aggrieved, who's been invaded in peace talks, but they didn't. And so he had no choice but to come. Here's the key thing to take away from this. That whole thing in the Oval Office was staged. It was staged by the Trump team. The people who brought you The Apprentice, the people who brought you the fact that he's a nothing Hollywood, wannabe, were able to stage this event. And here's what they did. Obviously, first of all, Zelenskyy has never worn a suit during this conflict, as you pointed out. So he dressed the way he always dresses, whether he's come to the United States, whether he goes to Europe, whether he goes to the United Nations. Everywhere he goes, he dresses this way. So it has nothing to do with Trump or the White House or anything else. And what they did was, if you remember, Trump, from the very beginning of the invasion, has been pro-Putin. Throughout the campaign, he has said that if and when he wins, he is going to end U.S. support for Ukraine. That's it. The spigot turns off. No money, no weapons, no political support, no nothing. Because Trump supports Putin, and he wants Putin to have Ukraine. He has said that. He has basically said that, right? And so the problem is that was one of the issues that he was not popular with in the campaign. He said some things that resonated with people, and so he won the election. But the people, the voters, Ukraine wasn't the top priority for them. But you could see the polls, they disagreed with him on Ukraine. And they continue to disagree with him on Ukraine. So since he's become president, and he's been able to start implementing his Ukraine policy, which is to cut off U.S. support, over 2/3 of the American people disagree with him on that. And Trump doesn't like that. And even Republicans have spoken out against it. Lindsey Graham did a couple of times. Senator Tom Tillis did a few times. John Thune did a few times. This is one of the rare times when Republicans have distanced themselves from President Trump. Numerous members of the House and Senate have said that they support Ukraine and that the United States needs to support Ukraine. So Donald Trump is in a difficult situation because he is behind in the polls on this issue, and he has lost some Republican support on this issue, and he can't have that. Because if he wants to push his policies, his authoritarianism, he can't afford to be behind in the polls or lose his Republicans. So they staged this event. They brought Zelenskyy there, knowing that there would be reporters, knowing that there would be soundbite coverage, not People aren't watching 30 minutes of this. They're watching
Russian
a couple
media?
of sound bites on Fox
Russian media was
News,
there
on
too.
OAN, on Newsmax, and they're not seeing what really happened. And so what they did was they planted a false narrative that Zelenskyy is not grateful. Zelenskyy has thanked the United States so many times that it would be more than 30 minutes to play all of his thank yous. It would be longer than the entire meeting to just play clips of all the times he has thanked the United States, the president, the Congress, the American people, everything. He has done it numerous times. He has done it from day one, and he has continued to do it up through now. He is incredibly grateful. The Ukrainian people are incredibly grateful. To portray them as ungrateful is not only incredibly dishonest, but it is intended to try to get this warped way of changing the polls and quieting the Republican dissent. And that's what that was all about. That's why they embarrassed Zelenskyy the way they did. That's why they set up the phony comments the way they did about the lack of gratitude and everything else. That little speech that J.D. Vance gave, like you said, he finally got to show himself. And all he did was show his ass. I mean, the guy is so ignorant, it's not even funny. He spent no time in the Senate. He was not involved in politics any time before that. He knows nothing about foreign policy. He knows nothing about military policy. He knows nothing about the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The guy should just sit there and be quiet. Terry Bradshaw would offer more on this issue than he, going back to our other issue.
Oh, that hurt. That hurt.
I bet it's true. At least Terry Bradshaw has been on an aircraft carrier, And, when the NFL does their Veterans Day thing. Anyway, so the point is, you could read the pieces on the corridor. I've talked about this from day one. There are multiple pieces about the Russian invasion, about Ukraine's fight, about U.S. and NATO and European and other support for Ukraine, and most recently about the staged event that happened. It was despicable. It was a desperate attempt by a foolish individual and an ignorant White House. And the sad part is it's working. And that's what disgusts me about it.
And, J.D. Vance came here shortly after this. And here's the funny thing, people. Zelenskyy went back to meet with the Europeans, and then he went back to his war-torn country. And after this meeting, well, Trump went down to Florida and held a 4-figure, 5-figure, maybe 6-figure plate event for all of his MAGA people down in Mar-a-Lago. And J.D. Vance came up here to Vermont to go skiing. And he was not wanted up here skiing in Vermont. He was met with some criticism. The funny thing is, people, if you're watching, the thing about Putin and all this Ukraine stuff, people seem to forget. We talked about this on the show before this was an issue. And one of the things we talked about was when President Trump was withholding aid and weapons to Ukraine for dirt on Biden for the 2020 election. People seem to forget about that. Well, Trump was actually impeached on that matter. And we said this on this show, that if Trump gets in for a second term on that election, Putin will probably take over Ukraine. But because Putin didn't get that help from Trump loses the election, Biden gets in, the money's released, and with that money and those weapons, guess what happens? That push that Putin says, hey, I got to get in there and get this done. Here we are 6 months in, and we're like, wow, Ukraine is whooping that ass. They're keeping them at bay. And if Biden doesn't get in 2020, I don't think Ukraine is able to fight them off without that support, without that money. I think Putin is able to move right through the Ukraine, and he's able to go into Poland, and then China gets to do whatever, or North Korea gets to do whatever they're part of. But I think that money right there proves to me that Trump was already setting Ukraine up for failure when he was withholding that money. He already was, and people seem to forget, Putin and Trump go way back. A lot of people think that this is just a superpower. No. You go back into the 80s, 90s of boxing, the sport of boxing, and Putin, KGB, Russian mafia, Putin and Trump have been tied at the hip since that time. When Trump got elected, the first thing Trump had to do was he had to clear the Trump Towers out and get the Russian KGB and everybody out of there that was running crap up in there in the boxing league. So for those who think that this connection isn't there, it's always been there, and I'm surprised it wasn't brought up when Trump was vetted to become president. His connections, it surprises me why that didn't happen. Ken, is there anything you want to add to this? Because this was a crazy moment.
A couple of things we need to understand. Number one, Trump isn't president. Elon Musk is. Trump is the face. To use an old Las Vegas mob term, when the mob used to own casinos in Las Vegas, they had a face man. If those of you haven't seen, if you've seen the movie Casino, you know what I'm talking about. The face man in that was a guy named Glickman, and then Robert De Niro was actually running the casino. That's very apt right now. Elon Musk is running this country. It's DOGE. He's making all the big decisions. He bought and paid Donald Trump. Donald Trump does the glad handing. So this idea that Trump set this up, no, this was Elon Musk. Number two, you were right about the conversation. Here's the thing. I disagree with Rob with all due respect. I love him dearly, and he's right 99% of the time. This time he's wrong. 1% time. I think this is backfiring horribly in front of Trump. Everybody is making comments about Zelenskyy being this very macho war-fighting guy. They're bringing up photographs of Winston Churchill when he visited the United States and the outfit that he wore. So I think this is blown up in their face because even among the MAGA crowd, this is what's interesting. The MAGA crowd is usually united on most issues. They are not united on Ukraine. There's big divisions. I'm not even talking about the Republican Party. I'm talking about the MAGA crowd, with half of it being pro-Ukrainian, half of it being pro-Russian, or at least anti-intervention. I'm not such as a pro-Russian crowd. They basically don't want to get involved. And Zelenskyy owned Trump and Vance and everybody else in that meeting. I mean, it was great. He just, again, he's got a 57% approval rating. Trump's got has got around a 42% rating. And please remember, there was recently a referendum in the Ukrainian parliament about supporting Zelenskyy's continued role as president without elections, and he got unanimous support, including the opposition party.
That's right.
Okay?
Thank you.
I mean, the other thing I want to talk about is why this Ukraine is so important. Number one, yes, I'm an old school liberal. I like supporting the little guy. They are a capitalist-centered democracy under the rule of law. Yes, that's all important. But there are other strategic reasons why it's in the United States' best interest to spend this money. As Rob pointed out, properly, we haven't lost one soldier in this fight, or at least one that we know about. Whether there are covert operatives or special forces in there, we'll probably never know. Or at least won't know for many, many years. And it's in our strategic interest to hem in Russia, because you agree, once they take Ukraine, they're going to take the Baltics, they're going to take Poland, they're going to start World War III. The most important thing is China. If you don't think China is looking at this and studying every second of it, you are clearly the most ignorant person I've ever met. China was looking at this as a dress rehearsal for taking over Taiwan. Now I think they really had second thoughts because, first of all, they're seeing logistical problems. They're seeing the ability to use low-intensity conflict to really, overcome mass waves. And they're looking at the realignment of Europe in a pro-NATO thing. I don't think anyone can completely understand when Finland and Sweden joined NATO, what a dramatic shift that was. I don't think people understand that. And it was always assumed that Finland and Sweden would side with NATO in a war scenario, but you never know. They may stay neutral. This changed the freaking game from both a natural resources point of view and from a strategic naval point of view, which I'm not going to get into because I'm not really an expert. If you want a naval expert, I know a guy who spent 40 years in the Navy who would more than happy to explain it to you. Now, if we look at China, Russia invaded Ukraine by literally driving down the road. This is the equivalent for you people in Massachusetts of the city of Boston invading the city of Worcester. Straight line just going I-90 west. Taiwan's got a huge waterway they got to cross and do an amphibious landing. They've shown that the idea was the U.S. 7th Fleet, who was in the Pacific, would screw that up. Well, now, in addition to the 7th Fleet, you've got all these drone technologies that have been proven very effective, if not destroying boats, definitely putting them. So this is very important from a NATO point of view if we want to keep China in line. Also, Iran. Iran is a major player in the Middle East. They were big fans with Russia. They were supposed to get all the help. And now Iran, after their disastrous Gaza invasion, got their nose bloodied like you wouldn't believe. And now they're having problems too. So this is a geostrategic move of why it's important to keep Ukraine independent, safe, and at least if not in the West column, definitely touring in the West. As for that, for God's sakes, the problem with the Musk Trump people is they don't seem to understand that there's a world outside their bubble. They don't get that. And anybody who looks at the election results, Trump did not win a majority, he won a plurality, which means he less than won 50%. And he is losing people left, right, and center. And if I can go back very quickly to what we talked about, the executive orders, which are basically pretty much on hold, he is ruling by executive fiat. He's not going to Congress with, since when you pointed out, 3-vote majority in the House, he can't get anything done. Remember, we got a budget coming up pretty soon. People forget the federal budget ends September 30th. It means October 1st, we had to have a budget or we're going to have a government shutdown. We're now in March, and remember, Congress goes on vacation in July. So we've got now basically 3 months to come up with a budget for the next fiscal year. And if you all remember the last time we did it, it was very messy. Now throw this into the mix. How much blood on the floor are you going to have now with Speaker Johnson and Mitch McConnell, who have very little control of their conferences? You're going to have people looking towards the midterm election. Gas prices are up, food prices are up, inflation is up, the stock market is tanking left, right, and center. I don't know if we're going to talk about the tariffs, but that's another issue. So, to quote Bill Clinton, it's the economy, stupid.
Yeah,
and I mean,
it's funny.
Ken makes a good point. But what I was saying is not the American people, because that doesn't matter to Trump. He doesn't care what the people think because he's an authoritarian. The point is he silenced the Republicans. Even Lindsey Graham has switched sides, and he was one of the few people that you could have counted on to support Ukraine. Now he's even saying that Zelenskyy needs to be grateful. And, some of the other people that had spoken out contrary to Trump, Republican leaders, are backing him on this play. So that's what I meant by effective, because Trump doesn't care about the American people. He doesn't care about Europe. He only cares about whether he can get away with his love affair with Putin. And that's the sad part. The other thing that I wanted to point out, it hasn't come up yet, is this ridiculous deal over the Ukrainian minerals, right? Maybe people aren't paying attention to that, but that was part of this whole thing. And Ukraine, the reason that Russia invaded Ukraine in the first place, number one, was to reestablish the Russian Empire with, taking over geography and then going up to the Baltics and what have you. That was definitely reason number one. But reason number 1.5 was Ukraine's minerals. They have farmland that Russia desperately needs, because even though Russia's a huge country, they don't have a lot of good farmland, and they've been exhausting their own natural resources, and Ukraine has a lot of natural resources. And so Ukraine was always known as the breadbasket of Europe. And when there was the Soviet Union, Ukraine was the breadbasket of the Soviet Union. And so the Soviets, then, the Russian people, were reliant on Ukrainian farms and produce and everything else. So that's what this was about. And so Trump's idea of saying, well, Mr. Zelenskyy, we'll give you some support. He was going to cut it back anyway, but I'll give you some support, a token support, a reduced support. But we want to take over like 90% of your minerals. And then in negotiations, it dropped to some lower percentage, but it's still an outrageous thing. Ukraine is so desperate for our support that Zelenskyy came here to sign the deal. That's the shame of this whole thing. They went and embarrassed him for no reason and staged this crap in the White House when he came here to sign the damn deal that Trump wanted. And by the way, the American people aren't going to benefit from that. This is going to be, when they sign this deal, it'll be, American oligarchs like, the Musk team and, Trump's cronies that will take over these minerals. And guess what they're going to do with it? They're going to sell it to Russia. The Russians are going to win. The Russians don't object to this mineral plan. They would give up the invasion because they've been embarrassed by it if Trump can get control of the minerals, because then they're going to get the minerals from Trump. and they don't even care about that. So people, keep your eyes open here. This is going to be a huge scandal, and it's not going to benefit us in any way, shape, or form, because the American people, the American government, the American Treasury isn't going to benefit from these minerals. It's going to be Trump's cronies, and they're going to be giving it right to Russia, which is exactly what Ukraine doesn't want. And by the way, we don't want it as Americans.
Exactly. And speaking of this incident, like I said, local politicians cry out. There's the story about the sweatsuit that he wears and the meaning behind it that he's been wearing since 2022. So it should have never been an issue. But Congressman Stephen Lynch here in Massachusetts, he condemned what happened there. Maura Healey, she condemned what happened there. And then also speaking about these MAGA politicians, a long time MAGA politician, Congressman Don Bacon, he come out and he was disgusted. And as I said, you have Congress and you only have 3 to 4 votes on that floor, but things are going, sir. This is a guy now, Don Bacon, who said he may sit back and went home, and he was like, you know what? This isn't working for me now. And I may vote differently now. And these are the things that Trump knows. He knows this when you have guys like this come through. And it pay attention, people. Like I said, we talk about a lot of stuff on this show. We post things on this show. I know I post a lot of stuff for people to be informed. And I know we see a lot of people on my page that come out here. They're obviously Trump people. And I have a lot of people say, hey, Keith, just block those people. Just get them off your page. I'm not blocking any of these people from my page from saying stupid stuff, because I need people to see the mentality of some of these people out here. If you don't see this, then you don't think that there's a threat to what we've got. The midterms coming up. Midterms are going to be very big this upcoming season. There's a lot of things that people need to see with their own eyes. You need to see the craziness of how some of these people think and how they believe everything. And they're the first ones to call us sheep. They're the first ones to call us misinformed. They're the first ones to call us lies. I had someone on my page and they said that Trump has done all this great stuff. And I said, okay, name one thing that Trump has done since he got into the office that was great for the economy. Crickets. Crickets. Because there hasn't been one thing done. And the one bill that did get passed was already in the process of being passed before he got into office. He just signed off on that bill for the Lakeland Act. That was already bipartisan, agreed upon under Biden. So don't say he got that bill through, because he didn't. He just merely signed off on a bill that was already going through the motions. So stop it. Like I said, people like Mr. Lemon and Bacon, Mr. Bacon, these are people to pay attention to. And it's craziness. A lot of it is craziness. Please be informed. I see Joe in the chat. What's going on, Joseph? Amy Gleason has been named DOGE. This last story, we already talked about this. We'll skip over this. Zelenskyy, after leaving here, he went to Europe and got the backing of Europe, which is definitely what you guys already touched on. I'm not going to get back into that, but you guys already talked about the reasoning behind why this is very important that Ukraine does not fall. But here's the hypocrisy, people. While I'm seeing everybody say F the Ukraine, I'm hearing people say, we don't need to give money to the Ukraine, America first. There's this whole America first, America first, America first, America first. Then in the same 48 hours later, Trump goes to Marco Rubio and says, I want you to give $4 billion to Israel. Now, first and foremost, I've got no problem with giving money to Israel in their battle against Hamas and Iran. Got no problem with that. But the hypocrisy is don't push this narrative and you beat Zelenskyy up and you get everybody saying we need to think America first and not give anybody any money. But then you turn around and you give $4 billion to Israel, whose leader you can also say some bad things about because he was also under investigation for some of the war crimes that they did with the beeper. So I'm going to let R Squid, my military guy, talk about kind of the hypocrisy of this. America first, but then we turn around and we give, now MAGA's applauding that they're giving the $4 billion to Israel. It makes no sense. You can't have your cake and eat it too. It's crazy.
Well, if you're trying to find logic in the MAGA crowd, you're just looking in the wrong place. I mean, there's nothing to say about that. These are not, you've got a range of people here, right? It's not a monolithic organization. So there are certainly some people that, may have some interest and knowledge of various things. They're not all stupid, that's for sure. That would be a foolish thing to suggest. But they don't speak with one voice, and they certainly don't share a common understanding. Some of them are much more informed than others, most of them not fully. But I'll leave it at that. But the issue with this, foreign aid is a critical piece, whether you're talking about USAID or some of our direct things. When we give money like this to Israel, and this has been true since we started giving money to Israel and some of the allies in a similar situation, is we're not actually giving them $4 billion. What happens is 90% of that money stays in the United States. All right. So we're not giving $4 billion of your tax dollars to another country for its people. 90% of that money goes right here for things that we make, that we're selling. And basically that's what that money goes for. And so that might be munitions, weapon systems, some technology. And keep in mind that we benefit. Israel has an incredible technology corridor, and they've developed some technology that we benefit from getting it from them. So there is a mutual relationship there that exists outside of the politics, outside of the geopolitics. It's existed for decades, with a lot of mutual benefits to this relationship, financial and political, military, and otherwise. Now, obviously, the relationship with the United States, our friend Israel is, critical in the fight against Iran. Iran remains one of our top adversaries, certainly our top adversary in the region. In fact, Iran was more powerful than Russia for a while there because they were the ones giving Russia the weapons they needed to go to Ukraine. Russia's relying on North Korean soldiers for cannon fodder, and they're relying on Iran for weapon systems. So, that tells you the situation. Now, yeah, Iran's got themselves into some trouble. That support of Russia against Ukraine didn't go very well for them. I don't know that they made much money on it, but they certainly didn't benefit from it. And then, of course, their attack on Israel fell flat, and their other overtures fell flat. And the only thing that Iran has seen is the world gel more against them than anything. So Iran is a mess. Nevertheless, they're a menace. They're a mess and a menace. And so, we rely on that alliance with Israel, their intelligence network, their willingness to do things that we might not be willing to do, from an intelligence and a military standpoint. And so, there's mutual benefit to that. So I get some people are upset because of the situation in Gaza. I don't share that upsetness, but I do understand where people come from with that. I think, I said this on the show before, watch the actual footage of October 7th before you want to complain about our support for Israel.
Anything you want to add to that, Ken?
Yes. First of all, we're not giving anybody $4 billion. We don't give that money away. Okay. It's not $4 billion. That's the value of the products we're allowing Israel to purchase. Now, anyone knows that worked in retail, there's a big difference between retail and wholesale. Number two, in that region, they are our only stable strategic ally. We are getting a lot more than $4 billion worth of stuff, mainly intelligence, from the Israelis. Not only that, people don't understand. Israel has a navy, and for its size, a very effective and large one. They have been keeping the Mediterranean a NATO lake. Now, Turkey has not, they are technically part of NATO, but they like playing both sides against the middle, and they keep Turkey in line. They do. So Turkey, without Israel being there, I think Turkey would be a lot more friendly with Iran and Russia. So they're doing their bit. I'm a big supporter of Ukraine. I'm a big supporter of Israel. The Israeli-American relationship goes back since the beginning of the state of Israel. There are many reasons we could spend an entire show on it, but I don't think we have the time.
No, good stuff. And let me just get into this. Amy Gleason is the new DOGE admin, as we talked about in the show last week. They pulled back some of the powers. they put it out there in the open, but he still has powers. But she's the faceplate now. Amy Gleason takes over. She's the DOGE admin. And shortly afterwards, the $55 billion that DOGE claimed that they had found in waste, guess what? They could only account for $17 billion of that $55 billion. And when the heat really, really came on, guess what ended up happening? DOGE went on their website and they took those receipts that they had posted down quietly over this weekend. So now you can't even go on there and see the ones that they claimed and lied about that they have no answers for. Thank you, Mr. Musk. Also, President Trump overruled the firings of the nuclear warhead workers that they're trying to get back, that they can't find some of these workers now. They want to get these people back. And here's the crazy, weird thing. We've seen these movies over and over again, and somewhere, someplace, some of these movies are based in some truth. And this story on the Political Wire says that Russia and China are targeting disgruntled workers. And R-Squared's a JAG officer. Behind the scenes, he's seen it all. He's heard it all. There's things that he can't even talk about. But disgruntled people...
Well, he could, but then he'd have to kill you.
Disgruntled people in the government exist. I mean, he can pretty much answer something like that, correct?
Sure.
Ken, defense attorney, disgruntled
Absolutely.
people.
Look, anybody who has read any work about intelligence stagecraft knows disgruntled government workers are a prime recruitment goal. You always want the guy who's disgruntled. If he can still be employed, he doesn't think he or she doesn't think he's been advanced, doesn't feel he's appreciated, he's underpaid. That's a primary target for any intelligence agency, and has been since the beginning of time. So, if I may, those of you who are old enough to have relatives who served in World War II, remember something called the GI Bill. Actually, it wasn't a bill, it was a series of legislations that helped GIs adjust to coming back from serving in Europe and Japan and other places, and helped them pay for college, got them low-cost loans for houses, etc. General Marshall, who was one of the biggest proponents, stated his sole reason for doing that was to avoid the problem they had after World War I, when he had a bunch of disgruntled vets who came back to nothing and laid the ground for the fascist takeovers of Italy and Germany. That's the reason they did that. They did not want all these groups of people who come back disgruntled and could focus their energies to figure we did this. And it worked very effectively, and has since that time. So when DOGE doing all this, hey, why don't you listen to General Marshall, a 4-star general, former Secretary of State of the United States, and maybe you should listen to him about how you handle people.
Yeah, I found it crazy that, Musk fired these people with high security clearances. And, a lot of security people are speaking out and saying, hey, they fired these people without the proper way to do it. You're supposed to go through Congress. And I'm pretty sure when you fire somebody with this type of security clearance, there's some type of checks and balances to monitor them for a certain amount of time after you let these people go, so they don't disappear off the grid and not be able to find them, which is kind of scary in this situation. Andrea says, Congress controls the money. Money has been appropriated to the Ukraine. He can't stop that. Yep, we talked about that. So, again, there's movies based on things like this. This is a scary thing that Russia and China is trying to get these disgruntled workers, because we've heard this down at the border. We've seen the stories of Border Patrol agents who've been flipped by cartels. Everybody, to quote the $1 million Ted DiBiase, everybody's got a price, is what Ted DiBiase used to say back in the day. And it's crazy. So, also in the Trump troubles, 21 DOGE staffers resign, refusing to jeopardize sensitive data. So this talk that they're not getting into sensitive data, this speaks out, and it's definitely something to worry about. Also this week, Linda McMahon was confirmed Department of Education pick. She's just another yes woman, people. She didn't. Connecticut, she wasn't liked. In Connecticut, she was a big person for charter schools. She was big on getting charter schools, privatization of the school system, which is exactly what President Trump wants to do. Also, recently, Republicans have been told to avoid town hall meetings because of all these viral. Look, let's be honest. Rob already said it. Let's be honest. It's not all Republicans. It's the certain MAGA Republicans showing up to these town hall meetings with I saw one poor guy. I don't know what state it was in. This one poor MAGA guy, congressman, he showed up to a town hall. He starts spouting off this crazy MAGA stuff at the town hall, and he got hell unleashed on him. It was hilarious. I see you nodding because I know some of these are square that were part of your columns. I'm going to let you comment on this because it's kind of funny.
No, I mean, there's really nothing to say. It's kind of sad. These people are so out of touch and so extreme. They go back to their town halls thinking that they're going to be thanked and they're going to be flags waving and music playing. And instead, their own constituents show up angry because of the economic ramifications of Trump policies and the firings, and it's not going well. So all of a sudden, these people who thought, they believed their own hype, so to speak. There are a few colorful metaphors we can use. That something
I know
doesn't stink.
Ken won't hold back.
And but that's look, that's what it is. Now, the sad part is it's not going to change anything, at least not in the short term, maybe in the long term. If there's more opposition and it's consistent, then just maybe a few of these people will will end their influence. But it's going to take some time. Go ahead, Ken.
Okay. I know everyone has the attention span of a gnat. Okay? This is your trigger warning for those of you little snowflakes who need your safe spots. I'm about to go full diesel on you.
Oh, I knew it.
Okay?
I knew it.
Now, does anyone remember something called the Affordable Care Act? And they called it Obamacare. And do you remember the Republicans tried to overturn it? When they tried to overturn it, all hell was unleashed. I watched these town halls. I mean, these Republicans were running for their lives. Matter of fact, I was watching one in Texas. I forget who the congressman was. Some West Texas rural place where, they believe in God's guns and the Bible. Okay? And this idiot congressman came there. And he walked in, and these women, it was basically a group of women, I would say mothers, although I don't know, they just looked, that was the age they were, and they were talking about child care issues. So I'm assuming that, although I don't know, laid into this guy with profanity that I would be nervous to use at a Patriots game. Maybe an Eagles game, but definitely not a Patriots game. About what he could do with his proverbials and what they were going to do to that piece of skin located beneath your stomach and your knees if they so much as touched the ACA. You got to understand that that the entire Trump MAGA movement was based on owning the libs. The idea was we're going to own the libs. We're going to get all the stuff that we want, and all those northern liberal snowflakes are going to get screwed. Now everyone's finding out they're coming for their programs. And let me tell you, they ain't happy. And we said this before. Robert said it before. Mr. Sinister One, you said this before. And I don't mean to repeat myself, but I will. I ain't at all feeling sympathetic for you. And I think that this is going to be a major turning point where Trump's going to start losing people because it's starting to hurt them in their pocketbook. I'm old enough to have grandparents who remember FDR. And I will never forget talking about my grandfather right before he passed away. He remembers FDR. And he remembers. My grandfather was Jewish, and he never forgot that, you'd have conversations with these people who thought that Roosevelt, pardon my French, was a nigger-loving, kite-loving, threat to democracy. But they were also in the exact same sense. We voted for him for 4 times, and I would vote him for 4 more times if he was still alive because he saved my financial bacon. I'm paraphrasing here. And that's what's happening. And that's why Trump's in trouble. Or I should say Elon Musk's in trouble, because Trump isn't running this administration. Elon Musk is, and everybody should know that.
Good stuff. Let me move on to the next topic here. We got 2 topics up before we get out of here. Kash Patel, FBI director. He says he wants the UFC to train federal agents in the FBI. Look, stop it. Stop it. Look, hold on.
Sit down.
Sit down, Kash Patel. Look, there's a reason why Dana White was speaking at the RNC. There's a reason why Dana White was speaking at MSG. Because Dana White was trying to get himself hooked up with a cushy ass contract to train federal agents. Come on, dude. There's a ton of schools across the country that the FBI could go to in any state and get any guy to train agents in MMA and ground. And Rob's a military guy, and some of the stuff that these guys are learning in the UFC with holds and takedowns, isn't most of that stuff trained in the military anyway?
Variations of it, yes.
So again, Kash Patel is catering to a base and setting up Dana White for a cushy. If you people don't see the hypocrisy, people talk about Trump draining the swamp. He's not draining any swamp. He's building Dagobah at the White House. If you don't see it, there's no swamp being drained. You're gonna pretty much see Luke's X-wing fighter sitting on the front in the swamp, and Yoda's gonna be standing there on the top of the stairs at the Capitol because Dagobah is coming, and they're doing it, and they don't care. And MAGA people are all happy. Oh, Dana White's gonna get all this money. No, this is conflict of interest. This is elitism at its finest. I can't believe that was even suggested.
There was no swamp. It was a lovely campaign talking point that was based on dishonesty because nobody knows the truth, and you always make the government the villain because it works, right? So that's what they did. They made the government the villain. It just, there was no substance behind it. And, to the extent that there's a swamp, it was created by Trump in his first administration, and he's doubling down on it now. You made the Dagobah reference, which I love. And basically, he's, the swamp in D.C. has gotten so big under Trump that the White House is a giant cesspool.
Alan says the military men are far more dangerous than fighters. They definitely are.
That's right. That's right, Alan.
They definitely are. Yep, they definitely are. So this whole UFC, stop it. Stop it.
Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Do
Has
something
anyone
else!
ever visited the training facility?
Do
in
something
Southwest
else!
Virginia?
That's it!
Like the 3 of us.
That's all we
Other than
want!
me.
Do something else!
No.
I visited.
Holy
when I
Elite
was
training.
working in the Senate eons ago, back in 1992, I worked on one of the subcommittees whose job it was to review the budget of the FBI. So I got a tour at the FBI's training facilities because we had a question about emerging technologies and stuff like that, how the FBI was spending their money. I got a tour of the training facilities at Quantico. I was very impressed because they were trying to show off that not only did they have traditional law enforcement tools, firearms, fingerprints, they were also doing this was back in the early 90s. So databases were coming in new, the internet was brand new. They're talking about that. They do go through a hand-to-hand combat. Namely on how to handle suspects who are armed, who have mental health issues, who have knives. I watched these guys and women too. They were being trained in what they referred to as unarmed conflict resolution. That was what they called it. Mainly a lot of judo, a lot of karate, a lot of and one of the instructors, they always, they preach the fact that don't go in alone. Always go in with somebody else because and I was talking to one of the instructors, very nice guy who that had this bald head. He was a retired Marine, of course. Prototypical huge shoulder, bald head. And he said, "Look, because when your enemy is countering on that guy, we're going to have this other guy slamming your head against the curb." I thought that was very interesting the way they looked at it. So
I got to say this too. Please pay attention to what Kash Patel said about the UFC. While I'm pissed about it, this goes back to what R Squared said about this cabinet. When you make a comment like that and you get your MAGA base all riled up and let's do. Here's the thing, people. It goes to show you how somebody is not. They're not the person for the job. You make a comment like that. That is a comment right there that even though it's crazy, even though it's outlandish, this is a comment that shows that this person is unqualified for that job. I see R Squared nodding his head. You feel that's the type of stuff. These are the little things that
Patel is unqualified to run a lemonade stand, okay? Seriously, what is his background in law enforcement?
None. And
what is his background in public administration?
None.
What is his background in agency reform?
None.
Why in God's green and purple earth would you hire this man?
Because he's a yes man loyalist, just like Don Bonino there from the podcast is now the guy underneath Kash Patel, which is a scary thought because this guy is connected to militias and white supremacist groups. And I don't know how the hell this guy got in there. It's scary. It's scary.
Being associated with white supremacist militia is not a problem with this administration or this Republican Congress.
And as we get out of here, the last topic of the night, I see a lot of people, a lot of MAGA people on this one here. Jesus, I gotta. The last topic of the night. President Trump passed an executive order to make English the official language of America. Now, here's the funny thing. I see all these people, MAGA people out there applauding this. They're all happy about this. They're all applauding. And I said, and the first thing I said is, what does this do for America? What does this do for the economy? What does this do for any one of us, along with renaming the Gulf of Mexico? What does this do other than him patting himself on the back? Because here's the funny thing. While you're saying English is the official language of America, you're trying to make Canada the 51st state and Puerto Rico the 52nd state. Canada speaks French and Puerto Rico speaks Spanish. So what happens if you get those to become the 51st and 52nd state? Are you going to force these people to use English as the language? Because the only real good thing that happened here by making English the official language is that the viral videos of Karens getting the shit smacked out of them in a Home Depot or a Walmart or a Shaw's or an Aldi's for talking about people not speaking English is now going to give them a reason because English is the official MAGA language in this country. So Karens will be able to complain and not get the shit smacked out of them. I mean, R Squared, I'm going to let you. Oh, Ken got his hand up. I'll let Ken go this time.
Okay. I'm going full legal geek on everyone because I think it needs to be said. I said this before. There's something called the Administrative Procedures Act of 1948. That lays out what you can do with an administrative edict. All administrative edicts must be based on current legislation. An administrative edict allows you to interpret legislation and fill in the gaps about all the details. That's all up. And the executive order is simply an order given by the president interpreting a statute that already exists. Okay, clowns. Now this is the big $64,000 question. Okay, this is the Jeopardy Daily Double. Find me the legislation that defines the languages to be used by the United States. Go ahead. Take all the time you want. Phone a friend. Use a lifeline. There is none.
It's a feel-good. It's a feel-good executive order.
It's not even a feel-good. It's stupid. Okay? I was born and raised in the New York metro area. I went to school in New England. It's where I currently live. We speak a different dialect than people in Alabama and South Carolina. We use different verbiage. If you go to Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, they use a different verbiage. So let me ask you, when you define, how are we going to define what English is? For example, I'll give you a real comp. What do you call a Coke? Well, define a Coke. What is a Coke? Coca-Cola. What would you call it?
A soda. But
okay.
outside of here, it's pop.
But if you go out in Colorado, it's called pop. Okay. Now, if you go to New York, in the old New Yorkers, you know what they call it? Flavored seltzer. These used to come from a fountain drink or a fountain drink.
I actually just had that this weekend. I was down in Rhode Island where we were at a restaurant, and their subs are called, we call them subs up here, but once you get down to Rhode Island, they're grinders.
They're grinders. Or if you go to Philly, they're called hoagies. Okay? Now, so let me ask you, Mr. President, who is going to decide whether Philadelphia, Rhode Island, or New York is correct for that sandwich?
Yeah.
Okay? This is why having lawyers are important. Because we will tell you this crap so you don't make a complete ass out of yourself.
Andrew Fernandez says, and is it going to be American English or British English? And she laugh emoji.
There you go. That's even better. George Bernard Shaw once said the Americans and the British were two people separated by a common language.
Oscar, anything you want to add to that? Bogus EO?
No, I mean, obviously, it's not something you can do by executive order. Most of the things he's doing, you can't do by executive order. We've discussed this ad nauseum. It's clear. That's why some of them will be struck down. The court will let some of them go, even though they're illegal, because that's what happens when you pack the courts. I mean, it's just the way that it is. As a concept, if Congress way back when or even now decides to pass a law, I would have no problem with it. It would be difficult for a while, but it's better than having what we have now. But the problem is you can't do it by executive order. So either way, it's illegal.
And before we get out of here, that was our last topic, but I do have one topic to ask you guys' opinion on, because we talk about freedom of speech and things of that stuff and freedom of the press. Speaking about executive orders, Trump changed the name of Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because the AP, which is one of the best media outlets out there, AP is one of the best out there, are now having their credentials denied to the White House because they will not acknowledge Gulf of America. They refuse. AP has said we refuse, and until they do, Haley Bennett there has said that they will not be allowed to attend any White House press conferences. I don't agree with this at all. I'm sorry. This is a huge attack. Go ahead, Ken. You got your hand up.
Okay. Now I'm pissed. Let me explain. Let's get some background. When the United States signs a treaty and is approved by the Senate, that treaty becomes law. Means it's legally enforceable. In 1948, I believe, most of the signatories to the UN there's a little known agency in the United Nations that deals with geographic issues and borders. So basically, this agency goes out, and if you want to have the determination of where the United States ends and goes to Canada, you go to this agency, and this is it. Well, this is where it is right here. This is where Canada begins. This is where the United States begins. They are also in charge of naming things. They do not name things with the internal borders. They only deal with things we call extranational borders, like what the name of the oceans are, what the name of passageways are. And guess what they call that body of water? The Gulf of Mexico. It is therefore U.S. law that you have to call it the Gulf of Mexico. End of story.
I saw the hand go up, so I had to give it to him. Oscar, anything you want to add to that?
I mean, obviously, it's nonsense, and they know it's nonsense. This is how they deflect from the real problems going on, because people will, talk about this and get, up in arms about it and fight about it and ignore the more serious issues going on with our economy and our national security and Trump's authoritarian power grab and stuff like that. The other thing I would say is the really scary part about this is that so far they've won in the courts on this, and that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it is.
I haven't read the opinion, so I have to stop talking about it. I need to read it, but I did see at least there was coverage that AP lost their challenge in court, and I don't understand how.
Okay, so we'll get a follow-up hopefully within the month on that one, because I know they did go back a second. Yeah, they got a second one out there. So let's get into the outro banners here. I got to thank everybody for supporting the show and buying the beanies and stuff. I got to get my ass in gear and get the t-shirt photos up, and thank everybody for those. Those are the shows I produce. Drafting the Circuits on Wednesday nights. We're actually going to be on Thursday night because I'm going to see Prince, Purple Rain tomorrow. Oscar Mike Radio on Thursday. Matty C Sports on Sundays. Hoobah Studios and Homeland Hero Salutes on Wednesdays. You Are the Star karaoke every first Friday, which means, guess what? We will be at Brockton Beer Company on Friday night for You Are the Star karaoke. And then Brockton Beer Company is open for lunch and dinner. Kids eat free Monday through Wednesday. So make sure to check them out. And then the Journey Church in Bardstown, Kentucky on Sundays and Thursdays. Sundays at 10:30, Thursdays at 3 to 8 or 3 to 6, it looks like. That's the food pantry. NAP, Sunday Wake and Bake, 20% off all pre-rolls every Sunday, 10 to 1 p.m. That's NAP at 1437 Bedford Street in Abington. And then Stay Young Fitness. Lionel was on this show. Make sure to visit him on Saturdays here in Brockton at Bishop's. And then Bridgewater Fire Department is hiring firefighters and paramedics. Please make sure to visit the Bridgewater Fire Department website if you want to apply. And then again, that's the Bishop's Training and Fitness, Stay Young Fitness Saturday program. And then IGY6, that takes place on March 14th. Doors open at 7. It's free. And then the South Shore Hot Sauce Expo takes place on March 22nd, 12 to 5. Sample some of the best and hottest hot sauces around at the South Shore Hot Sauce Expo. April 19th, Remy TV Influencer Awards. My artist, Viana Marie, is nominated for Best Female Hip Hop Official Nominee. And then Wicked Comic Con is April 19th. That's 10 to 5. That's free admission also. And then the 20th anniversary of Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. That is going to be, I think it's in March. And then all bet buses are free till June 30th. So please, please, please take advantage of that. Run the Home Base for veterans. That's coming up. And then Wu-Tang with Run the Jewels. That is in July. Actually, June 18th. Tickets are available now. I'm going to be getting my tickets for that. And then Broken Chain Biker Church, $20 a ticket. You can win this Iron Horse Outlaw right there. Custom design, $20 per ticket. Please support the Broken Chain Biker Church. And hey, there is the list. Beginning in April, nomination papers if you're going to run for a position here. And then that is the list. It's on the City of Brockton website. And that's it. We're going to get ready to get out of here. I'm going to let my guys go around the horn and say their goodbyes. I'm going to start with Ken down below first.
Want to thank all of our viewers and listeners, all 12 of you. Guys, gals, others, be safe. Stay informed. We'll see you in March. We'll see you in April, excuse me. I don't even know what month it is.
It's crazy. Squid?
Hey, thanks for tuning in. Obviously, a lot of complexity out there. It's important to pay attention, like we always say, but it comes down to one simple thing. You can support freedom and democracy and our Constitution, or you could support authoritarianism and support Trump Putin.
I like that. I like that. Hey, I got to thank everybody for tuning in the show. Alan Bursey says, yep, an absolute deflector. Yep. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for everybody in the chat. 9:30. Turnbuckles and Spilt Liquor. Y'all don't need to know you already know what we're talking about tonight on Turnbuckles and Spilt Liquor podcast tonight. The wrestling, you already know what we're talking about. So all I got to say is SpongeBob, we're going to get out of here. Do me a favor. Take us home.
See you next Tuesday.
Thank you for listening to The Booth on Hoobazoo and HatcherRadio.com. Please follow the Facebook page and subscribe to the podcast at Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. The Booth is a Sinister One production hosted by Sinister One.
I've got to start hanging out with friends that are a little more intelligent and understand politics and stuff. It's just that I'm up on this level up here, and all my friends are down here. Me, nah. You guys, nah. Maybe a little more down in here. Screw you guys, I'm going home.
I smoke, I drink, I do my thing. These bitches hating, so you know I got to make it plain. Don't do cocaine with your chick, my main. We stick together, true forever, yeah, you know we bang. I'm on repeat. Now that I done upgraded, I've been upstate, and y'all think I'm playing. And I got a hit now for these weak ass hoes who think I ain't slaying. Try me, and I end up laughing cause I never back down. I'm that chick with a clean ass whip. I don't need that shit, it's like I'm my own now. I get hurt, I get tired of fussing, fighting, guess I gotta crack down. Don't mess with me, cause on everything I'ma have to bring the whole city out.
WHOOBAZOO, that's Whoobazoo.com.
Enter website, enter website, enter website, enter website.